All right, welcome back to the Qaos podcast. We have a lot to go over. Mainly being, so we have a list of 5 things that we want to kind of cover today. First thing is talk about the YC Winter 23 batch. In
What's
like all the generative there's a lot to talk about. Yeah. The second thing is all the outages that are happening within OpenAI with DALL-E, GPT-3, ChatGPT, just all of it. Another thing is there was an interview that was done with Steve Wozniak, and so discussing that a little bit. Also the Times article that's going to be coming out next Monday, and also just Notion AI, just for funsies. So
we never covered Notion AI.
Yeah, we never covered Notion AI, so we got to do that. But today in the podcast room, we have Thomas, Alex, and myself, Shantanu. So let's get started with the YC slander.
So I haven't actually looked at, really in-depth looked at the YC Winter
list
23.
So
let me
So basically, are you familiar with the company Runway ML?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
It's basically as if I copy-pasted that company 50 times, and that's it. That is the entire YC batch.
No.
Yeah, I mean, so someone made, another YC founder made a list of all the different generative AI companies in their batch for the Winter 2023 cohort. And they basically bundled it into 2 giant umbrellas. You have engineering and business. Then you have kind of subcategories within them. So for business, there's accounting and finance, marketing, sales, customer, media. And then for engineering, you have data analytics, ML, infrastructure, and dev tools. So within that, there's even more companies kind of doing those things and just discussing the use case of generative AI in these different areas.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting. They must have pitched with some very unique value, because I see these sophomores and juniors in college pitching solely the fact that they can make in-game objects with AI.
Mm-hmm.
And that's cool and all, but it's built off technology that's not theirs. And I realize that's a little ironic, given a lot of our value proposition comes from Quasi's own AI. But I think that our AI is very different because we're leveraging it to create an experience, not a tool.
Yeah.
And it's weird to think that YC is valuing these tools that could be built by people with 20 years of life experience and 2 years of formal college education as companies that are worth $5 million.
Yeah.
The thing is that YC likes to invest in B2B SaaS. And so generative AI is so good for B2B SaaS because it's man, you could make a B2B thing super quickly if you want to.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I do think that a lot of these companies are missing the point of what AI is really good at doing. And it's not a lot of people just want to, get rid of humans and just be well, humans do this, humans do X. Let's just have the AI do X. But things that the AI is better suited for Y. And humans also find value in Y. And I think that a lot of people are missing the point about that.
Yeah, same thing comes with the fear that's around AI. I think that if the goal were to replace people, it wouldn't be done in some hush-hush way, because, if you replace all the human workers in non-manual labor and service jobs, then who's going to buy all the products? There still needs to be people employed, and so we'll find a way. Mm-hmm. The same crazy thing happened during the Industrial Revolution when machines came along, and we're well, we can help you chop wood a lot faster. Now you can click tab on Notion, which we'll go over later, and it can write kind of mediocre text content to help you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So it's just really interesting just to see.
I wonder what summer 23 is gonna look like.
I think summer 23. My feeling is that, so for context, Y Combinator's summer 2012 batch was a batch that they never talk about because every single company in that batch died within 6 months.
Was it all a single type of company?
It was every company in the cohort. It wasn't.
It was let me guess. Was it a small services app or something?
Small services, 3D printing. Those were the 2 big categories at the time.
And 3D printing totally tanked.
Yeah, completely tanked. But within 6 months, that entire cohort died. And Y Combinator likes to like make jokes like, oh, you know, we have failures too, and they use that batch as their failure. I have a feeling that this batch is going to be very close to another 2012 situation where all these companies are just building like for the sake of building, not for an actual like value exchange.
I also think that from YC's own perspective, this could be a way to kind of inform themselves on what they should look for in future AI companies, because they're basically giving AI enthusiasts that have first mover advantage a bunch of money. And it's like they could be running their own experiment into saying, okay, well, even in the next batch, they're still going to have a huge advantage over every other like VC group. So they could basically say, okay, we gave a bunch of these people $5 million. What ideas did they come up with when we like put them all together in a room? And they kind of like in the next batch, they can take that information and they can identify really, really good startups.
Yeah.
So
I think a lot about like the AI space is kind of ironic. It's just there isn't like AI is all about, you know, data collection. There's just AI is too new that there isn't enough data to really see what like truly works. And like I do agree with Alex in that YC is just gonna collect some data and see like where they can make money, where is their value to be extracted.
For sure.
Crazy to think they're burning that much money just for a little fun little experiment, you know?
They have so much money.
So for a little segue from the YC batch, considering that the ex-president of Y Combinator currently runs the biggest AI company in the world.
Sama.
But we love Sama. That's his Twitter handle. Basically, OpenAI has been having outages every single day in 6-hour increments. I've gotten at least 40 emails from OpenAI saying that everything is down almost all the time. And when I woke up to Twitter, just having a bloodbath of just every like product that OpenAI was servicing is just down.
Yeah. Guys, clearly it's Sam Altman's fault. You should DM him on Twitter very angrily. He's doing this to you on purpose.
Yeah, he's bullying Just Quasi on purpose by
shutting everything down.
Yeah, but like they had a really chronic outage on, I think it was last Wednesday.
I remember I was trying to write an essay.
Yeah.
Oh, it was terrible.
I was trying to do my homework.
Yeah.
And I was trying to do quasi work, and then it kept not working. I was like, might as well do my homework. And then it's like
rare words at the quasi office, by the way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then that didn't work.
Yeah.
So,
and I was trying to do marketing, and so it was like everyone was just thugging.
But the outage was massive. GPT-3 went down, the API. ChatGPT went down, Codex died.
And the playground was off.
And the playground died. Everything went down except for Bing Chat. That was the only thing that was allowed.
Chilling.
It was Bing chilling.
Is it GPT-4? It's definitely on some different server. It's
Also,
on some different infrastructure.
There's no way in hell that they called that AI Prometheus and it's not GPT-4. They enjoy. Also, they realized how they fucked up when people were like getting information out of Sydney, and they made it so restrictive that there's no way in hell they're not protecting like something big.
Yeah. I have a feeling that there's going to be, like, they essentially toned it down because of the promise of what was, like, of all the things that Sydney was doing. That,
when we say Sydney, we mean, like, Bing Chat. I mean, it calls itself Sydney. That's probably their internal code name.
Exactly. And so, when we talk about Sydney, it's like, it was toned down for a lot of reasons because there are a lot of people using it. And when GPT-4 makes its official debut, they're going to have some really cool... I know, like, one of our developers, Jack, he was talking about the multimodal capabilities, but then there's also,
care to clarify for me, what does multimodal mean?
Multimodal, in my mind, it means, like, models that are made of models, where, like, the output of one model is the input to another, or rather, it's a model use case.
It's kind of like how we had the workflows on the marketplace.
Yeah, okay,
where one prompt leads to another.
So you could, like, layer a bunch of use cases to make something crazy.
Yeah, it's like quasi-search in a sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think it's just going to be very interesting to see, but I think all these outages are pointing, one, to a lot of demand, and that Microsoft has to up their game for servicing OpenAI. And two, I think once GPT-4 comes out, then all of the I have a feeling that they're just scaling up infrastructure for GPT-4 so that they can just switch everything over for the
I have confidence that like the OpenAI team is killer. There's 300 people.
Yeah.
I doubt that the outage happened because of some coding error.
Mm-hmm.
I would probably guess that they were updating their back end or restructuring it, and that it just had to go down for like a little bit.
Yeah.
2 quick questions. So I know they limited it to 10 to 50 messages now, but how did Bing Chat handle all of that like tokens? Because I know it's like ChatGPT slows down a lot, but Bing Chat like originally for 2 days before it got eviscerated, but yeah, but like it could handle like it was handling like 100,000 tokens per request, which is like
jeez,
really because it's like 50 messages of like big complex.
Do we know if that entire chat is being sent?
Yeah, if you there it might not be word for word, but there's some way that they're inputting it, because especially in the long form conversations that got talked about with that reporter and everything, like basically it seemed like Sydney was kind of gaslighting the reporter. And obviously it's not like Sydney has bad intentions. People on the internet are just obnoxious gaslighters that act like teenagers. And so that's why Sydney was doing that. But it's like she was like doing like really complex like thought-provoking from a third-party perspective, like messaging to that reporter, talking about how like he doesn't love his wife anymore and how he loves Sydney and blah blah blah. Yeah. It's a little freaky, but like whatever. Average Twitter user.
Average Twitter experience.
Yeah. No, it's...
I mean, they definitely have some really promising tech. I mean, it generates super quickly. For those of you who don't know, when we say tokens, we mean like when you make a request to an AI this big, you have to convert your text, the characters, into tokens, into basically a number. And then all of these, GPT-3 has a token limit. I think for DaVinci it's like 4,000 tokens, which is, each token is probably like 3 characters or something like that. So that's like a big chunk of text. But if Bing Chat's token limit is like in the hundreds of thousands, that would be huge.
Yeah, per message it's 2,000, but it can handle a lot, and it understands stuff. Like when I talk to Bing, I don't like it uses smiley faces kind of passive aggressively by default, and
it feels that way.
No, or it feels like they're passive aggressive, and it's just off-putting when I'm trying to read quickly. So I tell it to use other emojis, and it will remember that for a really long time.
Like in the same thread without refreshing, obviously. Yeah.
Also, this is kind of not on the task list for today's episode, but I want to mention it because I thought it was really cool. Thomas found an article about cool tokens that you can input into like GPT-3, and it'll output really weird stuff.
Yeah, so I think that's going to be the topic of the next podcast, and we're just going to go through that paper, because that paper is killer. It's so cool.
No, for sure. There's so many things that are happening. It's just really exciting. Yeah, I think
what is that on the board? Woz being old?
Okay, so I didn't really know how to do a segue here, but basically there was an interview that was done by Good Morning America, I believe. They're about
red
Woz.
flag.
Either Good Morning America or
CBS this
CNBC
morning or something.
Man, that you can't.
It's a 6:30 a.m. interview, so it's thugging.
But these late night talk show hosts, they saw that Infinite Seinfeld episode, and they knew that their jobs were limited to 10 years.
Yeah,
they're donezo.
Yeah. So basically, Woz, in the interview, they were asking Woz what his opinions were on this whole generative AI space, and honestly, I was kind of disappointed with his responses, but I was also it makes sense for his generation. And Thomas and I have been talking a lot about this, so.
I mean, in the interview, he said that he thinks it's cool tech, but he doesn't think that it has as much application as it does. Mm-hmm. And that his main reasoning was that it won't reach that mass adoption because the AIs don't understand what they're saying. But do the AIs understand in the way we do? No. Mm-mm. But it doesn't matter really if the AIs understand or not. What matters is, does the human understand? Like, does it output stuff that makes sense to a human in context? And if that's true, then it doesn't matter if the AI understands or not, because you do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think
I think that's the component that he's missing.
Yeah, I feel like there's a sort of, I hate to put this on Waz because he created a bunch of really cool things. Obviously, he literally helped create one of the biggest companies in the world. So, mad respect. But I think.
So we're coming for your record.
but it's just a generational difference where he helped pioneer the age of information with the personal computer and with bringing the internet to everyone through hardware. And I think that was an incredibly valuable thing, and that was something that was definitely needed. And he saw that way ahead alongside Steve Jobs. And he helped build the entire infrastructure for what we have today. But I think our generation has lived in that and kind of dealt with all of the end results or kind of the repercussions of building that sort of society. And now we're finding this new technology that's hey, we can now build something even greater, even more personal to us. Let's go away from the age of information because we already have it. Let's go to the age of personalization. How can we further progress that? And using generative AI and just AI as a whole to do that is really valuable. And that's just something I think is missing because he was so, him and his generation was so focused on bringing about information and making it accessible to everyone. I think that makes sense.
I think I didn't watch this interview, but I think it's interesting just to see, first of all, it's a little funny that he's the person that's rejecting it, especially after Microsoft was the company that bought OpenAI, but I don't know. It's I wonder if he's ever going to use an AI tool and recognize how useful it is.
Really use it?
Yeah, because it's
I wonder if he's going to give it a chance.
Not even that. It's okay, when I talk to my grandparents, and I remember showing them Quasi.market a long time ago, original, that first break, mm-hmm. Or I guess, no, probably the first summer break after, so about 6 months after it had been the first generation on it ever. They were oh, this is kind of cool. And then my grandma looks at me and she's don't you think this kind of takes the meaning out of it all? Because it's not made by another person, right? The point, there isn't emotion conveyed in this because it's a form of expression that then you get to uptake. So I think it's an entirely different view of what taking in media is, what consuming media is like. And I think that maybe our experience growing up with YouTube and Instagram and social media especially probably altered that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I 100% agree. We've just consumed so much content and media that we assign value to that media, depending on how we perceive it. It's not as dependent on, when media was scarce and when there's only only the best of the best making great works, Shakespeare or whatever. Mm-hmm. The person making it had much more of a statement. But now that everybody has the ability to create, it becomes less about the media itself, but its meaning in your meaning and your perception of it.
Yeah, I think also another thing that's really interesting, because I showed it to my grandparents over winter break and they were completely blown away. They were basically, my grandfather, my dad's dad, absolutely loves James Bond, and so he was writing poetry about James Bond and the Shakespearean style, and he was just having so much fun with it. And he didn't care that it was not made that was not made by a person, which I thought was really cool. But I also think that another thing that's interesting is with the other generations, because they were built around this concept of, I never got to connect with my friends so easily. Now I'm able to do that with my friends that are in my generation on places like Facebook. And I can get access to information that my friends enjoy, and I can have a conversation with them about it through this medium. they love it because they were able to like build or like basically evolve their adult life around this. For us, because we've been bombarded with so much information that was liked by other people, recommended, like all these social media platforms are just about sharing other people's content. We're just tired of it. Like, we want to see the best of the best. We don't want to see everything. And so now with AI, it's kind of flipping that switch where instead of filtering through what we think is the best content that someone else made, we're just making the best content for you.
Yeah.
I have a quick question that's like semi-related to all this. So I've seen, like, I'm not sure if they're in the YC batch, but I've seen people posting on LinkedIn basically about like Figma-esque AIs where you drag over like a basic design and it'll create a UI with a basic description. Mm-hmm. Do you think that custom UIs or very custom UIs are going to be a thing in the future? Or do you think, obviously I think in the far future pretty much anything is possible.
Yeah.
But do you think that kind of these custom UIs are going to be integrated into, I guess, in my mind, when I imagine like this technology evolving in like, 15 years, it's like if I have AR glasses, I don't imagine a UI of like opening an app because that doesn't exist. Exactly. It just kind of gives me content information, like stimulus. So where do you see that going? Because you do the design.
Yeah, I think, and actually, I'm going to give some props to Google, so beware. But I think one really interesting thing that...
Careful, Sam might take it down again.
Sorry, Sam, I'm sorry. But I
what do you
really
mean take it down again? Take down Google again?
No, take down OpenAI for praising Google.
I'm sorry, Sam. But I think when a couple years ago, when Google and the Android team released Material U, which is their new like OS skin on top of Android 12 at the time, was this concept of based on your wallpaper, the entire OS would change its entire color scheme, and the icons and the entire experience would feel a little bit more colorful to you. And I think that started giving me the thought of, whoa, this is a step in the right direction of what people really want. Where, we're starting off with just, you get to choose a wallpaper and then the whole OS customizes its colors for you. But imagine where you just open up your phone and it's like based on your location you're in work, now the entire phone OS just like liquefies and changes into just work environment. The content is being generated. Like, oh, here's a post you should probably share with your friends, whatever. So again, I think there is a huge amount of value, and I think us as designers should figure out how we can start creating these variety of like use cases and how do they intertwine with each other. I think that bridging the gap and training essentially the AI to figure out in which settings are the best UIs possible, then we can give that information to the AI and they can just take that last 20%. I think that would be really, really exciting. That would make my life as a designer a lot easier because then I don't have to just be like basically I want a co-pilot for myself. I think that would be awesome.
Don't we all?
Don't we all?
Yeah. All right. The Times article.
Yeah. So Times is going to be publishing, like, Times is obviously iconic for their covers and how, like, for instance, I remember there's like the one about Mark Zuckerberg. Right?
That wasn't Zuckerberg. That was the guy who did Mosaic Browser.
Oh, yeah.
That guy.
Yeah. The fact that, take the fact that we don't remember his name.
But we remember the color scheme.
Yeah.
That's all we remember. But basically, like, Times is very iconic for their covers and, like, relevant things that are going on in the world. And the fact that their cover page that's coming out on either next Monday or Tuesday is just a ChatGPT prompt box is very, very interesting. And I think it's very exciting because now more and more people are just getting more exposure to it, because especially a Times article is very historically like significant for when something is happening.
I think AI is starting to hit the mainstream in a big way. We'll see how long it lasts. I think it'll go sort of up and down in phases, but I definitely think AI is long term like the internet.
Yeah.
Like it'll be in the headlines for a while.
I think what's interesting is like again we like to draw a lot of parallels to historical innovations within like tech and startups, where
like how 20 years is historical,
right?
It's
crazy.
Ancient.
Yeah, it's ancient. But I think like when the computers were first hitting the mainstream market, like there's the iconic photo of Steve Jobs with the Macintosh. And that was just when it started to become the concept of personal computing was real. There was still, like, computers were still mainly used in business applications. And I think a lot of the AI tools right now are very much being designed for enterprise. Not as many tools besides maybe ChatGPT and maybe Midjourney.
And quasi-fiction.
And quasi-fiction when it comes out. Stay tuned for the next episode. But
to see if it's still fiction.
but basically, like, there's not a really good consumer use case that people can latch onto right now that is like truly designed for the consumer. It's all designed for like businesses right now, and I think that's something that we're trying to at least get ahead on.
So I think something that's kind of interesting is that when PCs and the internet first became widespread, people were like, oh, everyone's going to be exposed to everything all at once. And that was the cool part. Except what we found is that everyone, or not everyone, but most people basically built echo chambers for themselves and didn't get exposed to everything. They probably got exposed to like fewer, all different ideas. Mm-hmm. And I'm wondering how AI is going to be used to change that, because I think that it'll definitely depend who gets there first and what they do. But one thing that I learned in a very cool YouTube video this week, shout out Dr. K, but basically, when someone spends their life trying to avoid something, it feeds their ego like a ton, mm-hmm. right? Because they prioritize that thing so much that all the other things and people like lose value as compared to it. So when they look at themselves, they see themselves above all the other people. And I think that AI will have a big part in basically, I don't think that things will stay the way they are with echo chambers. I think it's going to go like very echo chamber or very not echo chamber. And I'm curious to see how that kind of unfolds, because there definitely will be regulation around it, at least I think. But I don't know. Quasi-fiction will also have to deal with that. So stay tuned for episodes about that.
Yeah. I mean, on the regulation front, we'll see. It'll be interesting to see like what regulations come up in the AI industry. Mm-hmm. Like, we're lucky that we're still early. There's no regulations. I mean, it's the complete wild west out there. You can train your model on a bunch of copyright data, and if the output is a copyright, who knows? Like, does your model need to restrict or encourage echo chambers? There's no regulations on that either. Mm-hmm. It's very up in the air, but I'm sure that there will be regulations in the future.
Yeah.
Also, when there eventually is a congressional session talking about like ChatGPT and AI, we will upload a meme compilation from it using AI, of course, because there's if you've seen the C-SPAN video of the congressman trying to understand the internet and Facebook and stuff, oh man, this is about to be a slaughter. It's gonna be hilarious.
Way less understandable than that.
I low-key would want to be one of the people that's like in the congressional hall. Just I don't want to be asked the question because that's too much, but I would love to just be in there, just be like, oh my god.
Can be in the background doing meme stuff.
Exactly.
Do it for the meme.
Yeah. All right. To wrap up this podcast, we have one last thing to talk about, which is something that we should have been talking about because it's actually kind of cool and we used it for internal purposes, which is Notion AI.
On this topic, I think Alex earlier today, we were looking at the pricing for Notion, and it was like $450 or something like that.
$500 a year.
$500, and then Alex had this thought, which I agree with. He was like, man, I don't want to pay that much money unless we had like a Shantanu to completely do the entire Notion.
Yeah, by the way, Shantanu's Notion is like OCD levels of perfection. It's separated into the different parts of the business, and within that there's like subsections with sub-pages, and everything is where it should be. Like, you don't have to think about, oh, where was that page, because it's where it should be. It's crazy.
Yeah, but like if I had to pay $500 and craft my own OCD Notion, that's just a lot. But I see the value prop of Notion AI, which is basically to let people, like, make it easier for them to craft their OCD Notion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definitely like, well, I'm a super fan of Notion. So if Notion, you want to sponsor us, Let me know. We're a startup. We need those credits.
We have a perfect Notion.
Yeah. We literally have the
You can use it for
Notion.
marketing materials.
Oh, for sure. And I would like to say I think I designed it pretty well, but
our devs like Notion too.
Yeah, we converted almost everyone. Like another startup transferred everything to Notion just because of how OCD mine was.
Yeah.
Shout out Uniform Sierra.
Woo!
They're watching you. You just don't know it yet.
Yeah. Oh my god, that's not good. But yeah, I think with Notion AI, at least like the first version of it right now is like basically GPT-3/ChatGPT, where you can just do a / command and ask it to help you write something. So for instance, we applied to a business competition in Texas and we had to write a business plan. But man, who likes writing business plans? That's so like 20 years ago and we already know that's ancient history. So like I just used Notion AI to basically look at what I've already written about the business plan and just make a completely new one from scratch, and it did it really, really well. At least well enough for us to get past the first couple of rounds. So I think having a sort of I think there's been this concept that at least Microsoft's been pushing a lot, which is the concept of like a co-pilot for everything in the online verse, as I like to say.
The internet verse.
The internet verse. The World Wide Web.
Can it
bringing it back?
Yeah,
We're bringing
can it
it
close
back.
down Microsoft Teams and Outlook every time I turn on my
Oh,
laptop?
I wish. Oh my god. But like I think the whole concept of having a co-pilot for the World Wide Web is a really interesting way, one, to market it, but two, as a practical use, like I think it's awesome. For me, to help with my day-to-day workflow, having Notion AI integrated is great. For having the browser have Bing or like GPT-4 integrated straight in, where I can make LinkedIn posts off rip, like that's great.
Yeah, we'll see how it turns out. I'm curious too. I mean, I don't think any of us have tried it yet. I don't think it's even out. Not even
Which
for
one?
beta. The Edge in browser Copilot.
Yeah, it's not out yet. I'm trying to get in.
Yeah.
But like
We
we
should
have Bing
email-
Chat, but we don't have the browser.
We
yet.
should email people at Microsoft.
Yeah.
Be like, let me in.
No, we totally should. But yeah, I think regardless, like, you know, companies like Notion, they're taking the right steps to at least get on this train, and they're integrating it in a way where I can respect it. like I respect Notion for doing this. There are a bunch of other companies that are really trying and failing like miserably.
Google.
We can name Google, sure. But I think like, for instance, there's this new company you were talking about a little bit. It's called I think they're called Diagram, where they essentially are creating this new thing called like the Magic Genius, where you start making a mock-up on Figma and it'll finish the entire UI for you. And they have a bunch of other things.
That name is so That name is too Apple.
Their entire website just looks like if Apple were to go down
Magic
AI, it just looks
Genius.
like that. No, it literally looks like it. But like, and they have other tools where it'll generate an SVG icon customized for whatever you input it. So it's text to SVG, which is crazy.
That is cool, but I think
as a designer, it's
You can probably do that in ChatGPT.
probably. No, it is possible. Yeah.
I guess part of the icon is that it's so recognizable. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Especially like a lot of icons, it's like I want the icon that like the reason I want that icon is because I've seen it before and I associate things with it.
Yeah, and as a designer, if I don't pick something that's familiar but in a new environment, then you're completely going to lose the user. I could do a whole spiel on like UX design and just like design psychology, but offering like grounding someone in familiarity while still pushing really past it is something that like this AI verse needs to do really, really well. And I know a lot of companies right now are trying to use like the magical wand as like the main logo, or the sparkles as the main thing, and I think that's stupid.
Yeah.
As a designer, I think trying to force someone into your reality or like into a new AI verse is wrong. You need to like ease them in and create a familiar but still pushing the boundary experience.
It's like the cliche of like the sword being an extension of your arm. Mm-hmm. Like a really good, swordsman or fencer is really good because they can like move with the AI. Mm-hmm. And I mean we already see it now. Like we're using AI and I've probably been more productive than I've ever been before, and I'm sure other people at the office are too, just because I've gotten so used to knowing what to ask the AI, what not to ask the AI, how to phrase what I'm doing, and I'm sure I'm only going to get better, and so is everyone else. So.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we are nearing the end of our podcast. Are there any last things, tidbits, concepts?
Next episode, we should talk about that research paper.
Yeah.
Yes, we'll talk about that research paper. I think we're going to talk about two things. We're going to talk about fiction. We're going to do a deep dive into fiction. And then we're going to talk about that research paper.
Also, side note, MailChimp on Twitter tweeted during the entire Super Bowl with like a ChatGPT powered like they just tweeted with ChatGPT throughout the entire Super Bowl, which was really interesting because they don't have AI use case integrated yet. And I thought that was actually pretty clever on their part, because they're basically saying that they're super hyped about AI, but they don't feel confident enough to integrate it in their platform, which is totally fine, and I think respectable to like kind of hop on the train.
I bet they will eventually.
Soon, yeah.
We'll see what it ends up looking like.
Yeah. All right. Well, this has been the Qaos podcast with Alex, Thomas, and Shantanu. We will see you guys next time.
Yep.
Peace.
See ya.
Farewell.